Welcome to Careers in Discovery, where you'll meet scientists who've forged outstanding careers in biotech and hear about what they've learned along the way. This podcast is brought to you by Singular, building brilliant biotechs. This week on Careers in Discovery, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Janette Thomas of 5 Alarm Bio. Janette, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for hosting me. That's a fantastic opportunity.
Oh, looking forward to it. And thank you for coming on. So, Janette, we always talk a little bit about what you're doing right now to start with. And I'm fascinated to learn more, as much as you can say, about 5 Alarm Bio. People who listen to this podcast regularly might well know that since I'm coming up to my 40th, anti-aging is getting higher and higher on my agenda. So I'd love to hear more about building defenses against aging, the sort of state of the area of research, just anything you can tell us about what you're up to, really.
Yeah, great. Biology is always been an interest of mine, and 5 Alarm Bio is now at the trendy end of understanding about biological mechanisms. We're all learning, I guess biology has been general biology, and now we're trying to narrow it down. And what is it about aging that is different to a normal biology? And we've got better tools and techniques these days, genomics, proteomics, all the omics, and it's really exploiting all that knowledge and know-how from the past and understanding how we age and why we get diseases that are common in the elderly. And we all age at different rates. Why is that? And what are the differences? And what causes it? And what can we do about it?
Yes.
So the scientific founder of 5 Alarm Bio has a hypothesis, and we're working on that. And we can, if the hypothesis turns out to be right, we think we can have a really big impact on diseases of aging and treat the diseases of elderly, like chronic wounds or neurological diseases. There's lots of different pathologies that affect the elderly, middle-aged, and even some early onset aging. And we want people to be healthy, live healthy lives, and that's our goal, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I guess as you look at a lot of these diseases associated with aging, they are, before they become terminal, there are real quality of life issues around a lot of them, aren't there? And kind of that quality of life decreases fairly exponentially as people get older.
Nobody wants to be a burden when they're older. And I think most people are afraid of being a burden and having that poor quality of life and, insecurity about how they're going to feel and how they're going to cope. So if we can keep people healthy and have a healthy, full life, then you can make a contribution to society, feel valued, help our families and help society, and make a difference to the world. And that's what we want to get to, is not be a burden, not feel terrible, and not have these chronic debilitating diseases that really limit our function. Nobody wants that. So everything we can do to understand aging and really make us live a healthy, I like to think of it as a health span rather than a lifespan.
Yes, absolutely. And you touched on it earlier that you're at the trendy end of biology now. I think as well, there's, and I mean this with respect to the companies and projects that have come before, but there seems to be more kind of heavy science coming to this field now, and more sort of credible science almost coming to this field. Whereas I think previously, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it was kind of looked at as a little bit snake oil and being looked at from a different angle, right? Like a cosmetic angle and things like that.
Yes, because I suppose the first thing people think, especially when they're turning 40, is you start noticing the wrinkles and the grey hairs, and that's the first thing that you want to address, right? And then as you get older, you realise that they're the least of your problems when you can't walk or when you those sorts of things. But I think aging biology has really helped. So through my career, coming across systems biology or the genomics and proteomics, until we put all of that together, we couldn't really investigate aging because we were all looking at single targets, development, sort of almost it's not simple, but relatively simplistic biology. But aging is caused by a whole network of things going
Right.
wrong. So it's difficult to investigate it as a target. It's just it's a whole set of mechanisms. So now we've got better tools and new. I'm not saying we're using AI, but the AI, the systems biology, or the omics, putting it all together means we can investigate aging a lot in a way that we couldn't before.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate that 5 Alarm Bio is a pretty new company, and a lot of what you're doing is still under wraps. So I won't push you for details on that. But really interested just in I guess as CEO, your role in such an early stage company. Where are you spending most of your time? Where's your focus at the moment, and what takes up your attention in that role in a company like 5 Alarm?
Yeah, I was really lucky to be able to join 5 Alarm Bio because William Baines is our scientific founder, who's absolutely brilliant and has so many ideas. And he got some early research to show that a probe molecule can modify longevity of cells in cell culture, and also in a model of aging in C. elegans worm. So it's early data, but it was really interesting and unusual, and recognized as being unusually good data. So we want to probe that, really understand it, and molecules that can do better than that probe molecule. So I love that idea, and I love the fact that I can facilitate someone as brilliant as that to, develop their ideas. William had got a grant, but needed to raise money in order to facilitate the grant and actually employ people as well. So I was really, really pleased to be able to join the company, and I think I'm a bit oil the works really, and make it happen. And because they didn't have people to do the work, I joined it, and then we could raise the seed money in order to match the grant funding, and then hire people. And my role, really, I see myself role as a facilitator. I do whatever I can to make we focus heavily on the science.
Yes.
Everything I can do to take everything away from them apart from doing the science.
Right.
So we've got two great scientists as well as William now, Hannah Mizzen, Peter Tyrer, good skill sets that fit well as a fantastic team with William. And we're at the Haberham Research Park, Haberham Research Campus. Absolutely brilliant site to be. Loads of collaborations, networking, equipment hire, etc. It couldn't be better, and we've got a great team, and we're putting all our effort in understanding the science. And I just do everything else.
No, absolutely. And I suppose we'll talk about your career obviously in more detail, Janette, but I guess that looks like it's a bit of a thread through your career, is that project focus, that looking at how do we make things happen, how do we move things forward, has very much been a kind of theme through your industry career, from what it looks like.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Yeah. I really like facilitating. I love the science. I'm so interested in the science and every branch of science. I'm just fascinated by it. But there are a lot better people than me to do it.
Right.
And and I love hearing about it, and I like seeing the results. And so I love working with people. I love working with teams, and I like enabling the projects. So really it's working with the brilliant scientists and getting their ideas to a product or to some sort of commercial outcome, because that's the only way we get to use the science, right? Especially in pharmaceuticals, right? It's got to get to market to be useful. So it's really focusing people's minds, raising the money, doing the operations. But science is collaborative. You can't do it alone. So communication, networking, projects, leadership, project management is all key. And that's kind of my skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that removes the necessity in a lot of cases for those scientists to think about anything else, right? They can focus all their attention on...
Yeah, well, we're all different, aren't we? So
yeah.
Collaboration is absolutely everything in science. I think you can't, it's huge, especially, well, I don't know if it's especially, but in my field, in pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
you just can't, it's just too big. It's just enormous. So you need people like me that I see as lubricants, identifying people that can help, finding people to help, communicating to them the complexity of other people's ideas.
Yes.
And then letting people that don't like doing that get on with their work. So, you know, it's we all, I think I see it a bit of overlapping, a bit like sequencing. You know, you have to have overlapping ends to our knowledge and our expertise.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just help teams work together and use different skill sets and styles of communication and find ways through. It's like problem solving, and I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll come back to sort of how you found your way to that kind of function,
Yeah.
because I think there's always a story behind how people find their fit, you know. But going back to the very beginning, Janette, so you trained as a biochemist originally, I believe.
Yeah, I did. Well, after I had a very poor schooling. So
Okay.
my school, well, you know, I could have done needlework and shorthand and typing. I tried, rejected, although I do so. But I eventually came back to a little bit late doing science, which I
Hmm.
loved at school, but we didn't do very much at school.
I
So I
see.
came back to science and paid and sort of did my A levels late, and then did a degree, and I loved it so much, you know, just carried on and
Yeah.
did a PhD and then did a postdoc, and eventually ended up at Glaxo after my postdoc at Cambridge
Yes.
University. And yeah, well, as soon as I started doing science, well, I liked science ever since I was about 10 years old,
Hmm.
but I didn't know how to get into science. So I left school because there wasn't enough science at school.
Yeah.
But, as soon as I started doing science after my A levels, yeah, there's no looking back. I just didn't ever want to leave it.
Yeah. What was it that attracted you to it, do you think? You know, what was it that science brought that you enjoyed?
The complexity, the unknown, and problem solving.
Mm.
I just think everything about it was new. Nobody had all the answers,
Yeah.
and it was a huge field. Um, yeah, just it's just fascinating. Every time we did learn something else, it was just like, wow, why is that? Why is that? It's
Yes.
just question after question. I think I asked too many questions of people and things, but that's kind of, I suppose, that's just the way I am. And just everything's a next question and
Hmm.
finding out more, learning, continual learning. It never ends, and I think it's just fascinating. How do we work as people in
Mm.
the environment, as organisms? Yeah, the biochemistry, the fascinating map of how we work. It's just, yeah, I love it.
Yes. Well, it's clear that passion is still there. Absolutely. Um, so you touched on it there. So you found your way into industry. You joined GSK,
Yeah,
and you joined in a research focused role. And it looks like it was there that you started moving into project management
yeah.
during your time at the company. So I guess tell us a little bit about your early memories of that initial role at GSK and how you ended up finding project management and
Yeah,
that part of your journey.
yeah. I think that's the transition that was really hard decision to make. So I
Mm.
was in research, and it was fantastic at Glaxo at those days. We had plenty of money, we could get equipment,
Yeah.
and really do really innovative research, and it was fantastic. And I was always very nosy, so I would find out what all the other groups were doing.
Right.
I think that was the start of my project management. Really, it's like finding
Uh-huh.
out what other people were doing and asking them, "Well, do you know somebody else in another building doing similar type of work or chemistry that can help you?" So networking people together, even then.
Mm.
Um, and then I realized that drug development was much more than just research. You know, there's this huge amount of work beyond when we come up with a
Yes.
molecule. But it was a black box. You know, research scientists, you didn't get exposed to the rest of it. You kind of just knew there was some clinical development, but you didn't know much more than that. I was
Hmm.
very interested in it, and I did a lot of research because I figured that my nosiness and putting people together and planning ahead for my research experiments, I could do it all really quickly
Right.
without
Okay.
wasting
Yeah.
time, and that could be useful. But it was a big step to leave science,
Mm.
leave the bench. So I spent about a year going around the company talking to people, finding out what the job was like, and yeah, did they regret moving into development? Who are they working with? What's their
Yes.
job like? And then I just decided, well, I can't find out anymore. I just have to go and take the leap.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
this is
I
one of the challenges that people face, isn't it? Is that you can speak to as many other people as you like, and it's useful and it gives you
yeah,
some context, but you will never know if it's for you until you start doing it, right?
yeah.
Because everybody finds different things in different roles, and it's taking that step that lets you find that out. But I mean, was there anything that was the kind of convincing factor for you, or the thing that allowed you to take that step in the end?
Hmm. Well, I just felt whatever happened, I would be able to move somewhere else again in the company,
Yeah,
and I would
okay.
know so much more. So I didn't really see that it was necessarily a finite decision. It
Hmm.
would just be, it's a bit of a black hole. You have to leap into the unknown a bit, do what you can to make a difference,
Yes.
and then take the next step. So I did think it was going to be useful for my career, even if I didn't stay in project management.
Yeah,
Um,
makes sense.
yeah, and I actually, that it did involve a lot of I don't know if it's sacrifice, but put discomfort, because I was commuting 2 hours each way because I
Right,
had to
okay.
be at work in Greenford and I was living in Huntingdon,
Yes.
and it was, it's difficult, but I decided it was going to be really a useful career.
Mm.
And I'd say career loosely, like in terms of development, what can I
Yeah.
contribute? So yeah, so
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
decided to do it.
Fair enough. And then, I guess looking back from where we are, clearly it was the right fit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it gives me at that time anyway, a unique set of skills. There weren't
Mm.
very many research scientists that knew the drug development process at
Yes.
that time. So it was fascinating, and you met so many more interesting people with completely different backgrounds. You learned about marketing because your projects, you have to think about what is the product and who you're going to sell it to. Really, that's nothing. You never thought about those things in
No.
research. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I haven't prepared you for this question, so I apologize. I've just thought of it. But are there things you think that you've learned through, and there clearly are, but I suppose what are the things you think that you've learned about drug development from expanding your perspective on that would be useful for researchers to know, that perhaps they don't? As you say, they do sort of sit in this kind of, you get to IND and then you pass it on.
Yeah, yeah. It's just know that you don't. It all seems a black box, right?
Yeah.
It just is a fog of information that you can't understand, and you really can't take it all in until you've experienced different aspects. So if you're in research and you would like to get more into drug development, yeah, just think about changing roles or
Mm.
companies, not necessarily leaving research, but you get different experiences when you change jobs. So don't be stuck in one job. But also go and talk to people and learn what they do. If you're in a
Yes.
big company, you've got so much opportunity, and usually companies are very keen for you to understand how you fit into the whole process.
Mm.
So at Glaxo in those days, there was a molecule to market course, which was fabulous. So as a scientist, you could see the whole process. So
Yeah,
take
I
those
see.
opportunities.
Yeah.
And if you're in a small company, then if that company is working with contract research organizations, see if you can find people to talk to and learn about the overall process. Also these days it's so much easier to find things online as well,
It is. Yeah.
find courses, and I'm pretty sure some universities and things like Harvard, they all do online courses that
Hmm.
have free courses. I just think information is out there nowadays,
Yes.
but I don't think you can beat actually talking to people and getting their experiences.
No, absolutely. And I think, I've often found that research scientists have a lot more transferable skills than they realize they do. And perhaps not for project management, perhaps for other things. But any observations on what are the raw materials of a project manager? Like, what makes someone good at it?
Yeah, well, in our industry, science and pharmaceuticals, it's communication. It's about being interested in people, not necessarily people for them as being people, but people, what are their skill sets, and making connections. It's just all about the people, because everybody's passionate about what they do.
Yes.
And if you can extract the information out of them and translate it into language that other people understand, that is the skill. So it's a bit different from project management, traditional project management in capital projects, say building a road. It's just that's more about budgets and timelines and things, whereas in pharmaceuticals it's very much sharing information, translating it, talking about the risks and milestones, and keeping everybody focused on what we really need to achieve next.
Yeah, I see. Okay, interesting. So that ability to connect the right people and to bring those different disciplines together and
share the vision, because actually we all focus on, the chemists would say they need to make the molecule. And that's true, but it might be that you need to make intermediates first to test. It's getting that overall plan and getting everybody aligned in what the milestones are and what the goals are. It's sharing that and having a common vision for everybody that's the key.
Yes, makes sense. So GSK, a key transition for you into project management, and you never really look back from there. But the sort of next step was to start moving more towards more biotech type organizations.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that. What drove that transition, and tell us a bit about your experience with moving into smaller businesses.
Yeah, well, GSK, I worked in projects, and in those days, you were kind of your project champion. So you take it to an R&D committee. So in a way, you were like a little mini biotech company anyway. So you'd have a project team of 20, 25 people in from different areas.
Yes.
And you're all championing your project, and you would then go to the R&D committee for your budgets. And in a way, that's what you do in biotech.
Yeah, true.
So you were your own sort of biotech, and I used to lobby. I'd be a bit of a maverick and go and lobby before I go to the R&D meetings, and make sure that the decision makers understood what we needed, not to just in order that the right decision was made with the right information, for the good of the company and for your project. I mean, if you believed in one of the projects I was working on was neuropathic pain, and it was, we just really felt it was an important patient need.
Yes.
And that's the same in biotech. And when it became GSK, it was all taking so long to do the transition, and so we were all on a bit of it felt like we were all on hold. And I got a job in a biotech that seemed to be more dynamic, and it was a very hard decision. And again, it's that leap of faith. Is it the right decision? Well, I just decided to take it and moved to a biotech. I have got a little bit of an entrepreneurial background. I mean, I had a market stall when I was doing my degree to make some money at capital market. And my dad was an entrepreneur he had a market garden, and he had a machine tool shop and things like that. So I wasn't afraid of change, and I wasn't afraid of risk. You can always get another job, I felt. So I thought, I'll just try it and see what happened. And I loved it. So I never looked back.
No, absolutely. And then take us from there. So take us through the sort of next phase of your career.
So we were licensing tech from universities and putting together what we called baby bios. And that was really interesting. And that working with the universities was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. And working with the professors with good ideas and getting that technology and working on what the path to market would be, and then trying to raise money for those companies.
Yes, I see.
And that was interesting. I then moved to Newcastle for family reasons, and got a job at Centre of Excellence for Life Sciences, and worked with some absolutely brilliant people up in Newcastle and Durham and Sunderland and Northumberland. It was really really brilliant. And I managed to, we were working with the Northeast, I can't remember what they're called, but One Northeast, that's right. So
Right.
they're a local council, and they wanted to develop a life science industry up in the Northeast. So I was working with people and trying to commercialize, identify commercial opportunities, get facilities in the Northeast, get people to move to the Northeast and build a life science industry up there.
Yes.
And that was great. And again, that was really networking, going around, making connections, introducing people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But again, for family reasons, I decided to move back down south and got a similar job actually in London. So these are all same types of roles: identifying technology, connecting people, etc., developing science. And the company in London was not raising money, and so kind of ended up working for free and realizing then this was not going to work. So
no, I see.
But the people that I'd met really liked what I was doing. So then they said, oh, well, if it's not working out for you, can you do some work for us? So I realized then that actually my set of skills as a freelancer or as a contractor could be really useful. So I was working with all these people, and they paid me to become, I'd say it wasn't called an interim manager, but that's effectively what I was doing. I kind of say, I don't know, dog's body, just help them build their companies.
Yes.
And that was just brilliant. So they contracted me, and I'd help build companies, and I worked with a number of companies. One of which, my role, I felt, was work with the senior management team or the founders, get the company running until it didn't need me anymore. So I felt I was working my way out of a job all the time. So I'd start with them, have all the excitement of getting it going, getting the right people in place, raising the money, and then gradually work out and then doing it again somewhere else. And actually, that was really, really good. I did that at Horizon Discovery, and then a really major company. And I worked with the founders. We shared an office. They had a tiny team to start with. And then when I left, I think it was about 75 people.
Yeah, okay.
And I did, that was exactly what I said, just gradually work my way out of the job. They wanted me to keep coming in, and I thought, you don't need me anymore. You've got all these great people. I'm the least of you need. And then I worked for Atlantic Healthcare, and I thought I was going to do the same thing, but actually there I stayed for a lot longer. I got employed there in the end, and I actually worked my way into a job despite not meaning to. And that was a big transition again, because that was more operational.
Right, I see.
And actually, I didn't expect to do that, but I got more and more involved, and actually I really loved it. And I was learning a whole new set of skills again, which added to all my past. So it was a complete change, an unexpected change. And this is, I think, what people need, is to keep your eyes open, don't limit yourself, take opportunities, and don't be closed-minded against trying new things.
No, absolutely. I think it's interesting, the kind of the path you've taken, in that, early in your career as a scientist, particularly when you're doing your PhD, for example, you become the person who knows the most about this thing, right? This narrow thing, this very specific thing. And so it's that depth of expertise in a very particular area that makes you successful in it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes for some people that kind of builds the implication that that's how you then become successful in your career, is by getting deeper and deeper expertise and becoming the world expert in a particular thing. And sometimes that's the right thing to do, and for some people that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's the value is underestimated in building breadth, by individuals. I think by companies understand that they need people with breadth and people who understand how things fit together and how they connect. But I think it's a really viable career path for exactly that reason, in that a lot of people don't realize it's a valuable thing to do. But that seems to be very much what you've done, Janette, is sort of first learning about drug development more holistically, and then as you went into biotech, you sort of got more exposed to the commercial side of all of this, how it all works, the fundraising and how you build a business plan and how you do all that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know where my question is in this, really. It's
Yeah,
sort of an observation. I don't know if you've ever looked at
yeah.
it.
No, it's true, because I used to get jealous of people who had stayed in science and had such brilliant depth of
Mm,
knowledge. I mean, it was brilliant. I just love those people that just to be so clever and know so much about something.
yes.
I thought, well, why didn't I stay in science? Occasionally, I'd go, oh my God, they know so much and I know so little about anything.
Mm,
And then you realize actually it's okay. I just have to know enough about everything to ask the right question and bring the right people with all that expertise in.
yes.
Now, the last thing you want is everybody in the company being like me, because you'd never get anywhere. You need the experts, right?
Yeah.
But you do need the glue. You need people that can actually go around and find all the right people and connect them.
Yes.
So you need both. You need the width, the breadth, but you need the depth.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think I worked my way out of companies, because you didn't need that huge amount of breadth when you've got enough people. But to start with, small companies need someone with a lot of breadth, because otherwise you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And you need someone to say, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure we need to get a regulatory person in here I know enough to know to go and ask somebody. But if you're a new scientist starting up a new company, then you don't know what you don't
No,
know.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose as well, you touched on it earlier, the sort of entrepreneurial background in your family and in the work that you've done before. So that perhaps made it a little easier to make the decision to strike out on your own and do the interim work. But
Yeah,
I imagine that also taught you different things about running a business and
yeah.
gave you a different perspective on things too.
Did what it really taught me, my family, was you don't actually need as much as you think.
Mhm.
The freedom is not tying yourself down to needing money. um, you fortunately in this country there is work out, right?
Yeah.
And you don't really tie yourself down too much to being afraid to leave a job that you're not happy in, or to try something new that might make you even happier, or give you a different challenge if you're getting a bit stale.
Mm,
It's that I really learned from my family is, if you're not happy and you don't like it, or someone's really ruining your life for whatever reason, just move on. Don't
yes.
suffer it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the fear of the unknown does hold a lot of people back in their careers. I often say to my team here that a lot of what we do is helping people overcome that anxiety about moving jobs or leaving something they know,
Yeah.
particularly if it's their first job or they've been in a job for a long time or worked at a company for a long time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who I think probably find themselves in a situation like you're describing where they know it's not right, but it's that fear of the unknown, that risk that keeps them from
Yeah. And what's
exploring
worse than
something.
staying in a job or in a role that's not really using all of your skills or all of your interests? You just really, that's where, like, your company and the things that you guys do, you can really help people understand what their
Mm,
skills are, what their interests are, because it's very hard. It's self-reflection. It's quite hard. It's quite a challenge.
yeah.
And it's really useful to do, when you it's like, stop limiting yourself. Like, if you're in a situation, what is it limiting yourself? Why are you staying there? And it might be
Yes.
perfectly valid reason. Maybe you have got responsibilities, you can't take a risk.
Yeah.
Who knows? But that's for the person themselves to know. But make a positive decision to stay. Don't just stay because you're too afraid.
No, absolutely. And I think as well, sometimes it's hard to know what's out there, right? So you've had a career where you've been involved in lots of different companies. So you've seen lots of different ways of doing things,
Yeah.
particularly as an interim manager consultant. Um, I think when you're inside a company and, maybe it's the first place you've worked or there's not been that many places that you've been involved in, you can become institutionalized even in a small company, I think, and this is
Yeah.
what I do and this is the framework in which I do it and that's what exists and nothing else exists beyond that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but there are, and it's one of the reasons why we do this podcast is to kind of highlight how many options are available to people. You know, if you're a scientist and you've decided you don't like lab work anymore, you don't have to keep doing
No,
it.
no. You can stay interested in science, but not do it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so obviously, as we talked about, you know, sort of, you'd been performing these kinds of roles for various organizations for several years, and then made a decision to come and join 5-Alarm at an early stage in its development. Have you found that that's been, taking on that role has been different from what you've done before, or and what would those differences be? Like, tell us a bit about that last step.
Yes, it's again, it's out of my comfort zone. So at Atlantic, I was operations director
Yeah.
and worked for the CEO, and it was part of the senior management team, and you had a very responsible role. We were in phase 3, and I was in charge of manufacturing, working with big organizations, CROs, CMOs, contract manufacturing, getting ready for market, also IP patents. And if it felt like a really responsible role. But you start being the CEO, you're the one making the decisions. You know, you're leading people, even though it's a tiny team. I mean, you're still the one there representing the company, going out to investors. It is very different. Also, because it's such a tiny company, you're in charge of the money and the budgets, and
Yes.
yeah, it just feels different. Even though you've got the founders and the board, it is being the one there is a different role from being number 2.
Yeah, I think everybody I speak to about this says that even when you are for years the COO or the CFO or whatever, it doesn't prepare you really for that role because it's unique, and suddenly, you know, you suddenly feel a lot more responsible for everybody that's working with you, and you have more visibility. You have visibility of everything, right? So you sort of, you change perspective and you start thinking about, well, what is useful for people to know and what's not useful.
Yes.
And you know, it's yeah, it's unique in that.
Yeah, and there was the investors, you know, they're trusting you with their money. Spend it wisely, do what you said you were going to do, you know, run the company and keep them informed. Yeah, and you are the one making sure you don't drop the ball. The company
Yes.
doesn't drop the ball, and the buck stops with you, really.
Yeah. And I suppose finding the problems a little bit more, right? It's kind of, you want everyone functionally to be focused on their own thing and be executing that well. So it's kind of then up to you to find, well, where's this not working? Where
Yeah.
are the gaps? But I
Well,
suppose project management prepares you for that.
yeah, but it's having the culture where people aren't afraid to come and tell you bad news.
Yeah.
And having the culture where everybody knows what they're working towards, but at the same time, making sure that the people have their own development, that you're giving them the opportunities that they want for their own careers or for their own interests.
Yes.
So it's a balance, and then making sure that the company as a whole, you know, the board and investors buy into that. So it's just constantly thinking about, even when you're tiny, you still want to make sure everybody gets something out of it, and that you give the best opportunity to the technology, that if it doesn't work out, you know, you know why, and it's you've given the best opportunity for that, and that if it does work out, you don't run out of money before you've had a chance to develop it. You know, it's like, it's really looking ahead all the time and making sure that you can raise money and do the right work.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've been on a whistle-stop tour through your career there, Janette, and we've covered a lot of ground, and you've probably touched on one or two of these points already. But if you were to look back, I suppose, on the things that you've learned from a career perspective over the years, what do you think have been the most important lessons? What are the things you'd pass on to someone who's perhaps starting out on that journey?
Don't limit yourself. Just don't limit yourself. Reflect on what it is. Why are you saying no, or why are you hesitating? Or if you're making a decision, have you really researched it? do you know why you're doing something? I think people limit themselves so much. I think that's one of the main things that I would say.
Yes.
I remember when I was doing my PhD, and there was one of the big pharma companies back then was talking to me about I can't remember what they were saying, but basically they were sounding me out for work, and I just hadn't cottoned on, and so I'd sort of rabbited on about doing some other job, and I kind of put them off without even realizing, and I limited myself,
Yes.
I've limited looking outwards, so try not to do that. Try to keep your options open, and try and understand what people are getting at. And then the other things is really about confidence. It's really hard to be confident and assertive, or I think it's perhaps not limiting yourself again. It's really about collaboration. Just talk to people.
Yes.
I know it's hard, but everybody's in the same boat. Everybody else also finds it hard talking to people. Well, some people love it, but I really do like other people, but it is hard. Sometimes you're low on energy, or you think, oh, they know more, or they're not going to want to talk to little old me. And maybe they won't, but you can always give them the opportunity to walk away. You don't have to. But most people want to get to know you. They just want to find out a little bit, facilitate. Most people want to help other people. So just steel yourself and go out and do it and talk to people.
Yes.
And that's probably my biggest learning, is just to do that. And then the continual learning. Don't stop learning. In our industry, you can't stop learning.
No.
It might not be just science. Learn about something else, just and it will always benefit you. Just keep learning.
Yeah, and I think it's, even if the sort of thing that you learn specifically doesn't come in as handy as you would like, it's that attitude towards always learning more, knowing more, developing yourself is really important, right?
Yes, because you don't know what you don't know. And actually, I don't think I've ever done any learning which has never been of some sort of use. Because even if it's not directly relevant, it strikes a chord, and it might give you a connection that you didn't make before. Some in your head, like, oh, I like going to conferences, even if it's not directly relevant. I always kind of get creative sat in a conference. It must be something going on in the back of my mind. It makes you open your mind to things when you're listening to other people speak, and they use words that you might not use, and it creates links between things that you're thinking of in the back of your mind. I just find it a really creative time when I go to a conference.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, absolutely. And as much as you can say, I appreciate there'll be things you can't say. What's next for you and for 5 Alarm, and what do the next sort of year or so hold?
Yeah, well, we hope to generate our IP, and then we'll be going out fundraising again next year. So yeah, that's my next big thing, and I'm doing a lot of work on that. And this is new to me, but it's putting together investor lists and managing that process. What our business plan is going to look like. What work we need, this is the creative bit, is what work do we need to do in the future,
right?
What our next milestones are, and who we're going to work with for it, because it will be a lot of contracted out work. What our team needs to look like, what our team internally are going to do. So it's an incredibly creative and iterative process with a small team of people.
Yes, and a very formative year from the sounds of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Fantastic.
We're starting to do that and looking out what technologies out there. There's a lot of change going on at the moment.
Yes.
And a lot of potential companies to work with on more disease models and cell biology and biomarkers. And there's a lot to look at and decide what our approach is going to be.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you the best of luck with it, Janette. We will be keeping a keen eye out for any updates. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the fantastic questions.
Thanks very much for listening. Careers in Discovery is sponsored by Singular, helping you to build a brilliant biotech company. Biotech leaders spend far too much time, money, and energy on hiring and people issues. head to www.singular-biotech.com to learn how you can recruit and engage your team more effectively so you can focus on developing medicines, treating patients, and saving lives.